Yeah, some quite aggressive comments there and a very pessimistic tone about the prospect for this week of diplomacy and what can be achieved. Russia came out of the meeting saying that there were large and fundamental differences between the two sides that still existed. Those differences are over Moscow's demands that NATO alliance roll back effectively its borders to what they were before expansion at the end of the 20th century after the Cold War, and effectively veto Ukraine from ever joining the NATO alliance. Russia has become even more aggressive in its rhetoric this week since the talks, first with the US earlier in the week in Geneva and now with NATO in Brussels. And it really feels like both sides are now becoming very entrenched in their positions. For example, NATO today said they'd offered to re-establish diplomatic missions in Moscow and NATO for the respective sides. And Moscow said it wasn't in a position to do that. Moscow even said it wasn't in a position to agree on whether it would like another round of talks to discuss this issue. So deep are the issues and the failure really this week to achieve any progress. Fears are now growing that Moscow is maybe going through the motions a little and is prepared to talk about a political breakdown, and then who knows what will come next in the way of possible military moves.
Right, so we're really right up against those diplomatic red lines. And of course, where we have geopolitical issues, there's also energy security issues. We heard remarks out of Washington today on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Jake. And we've seen really how Russia has been using that as a political lever, fluctuating gas prices here in Europe with that gas pipeline in the middle of, I suppose, the chessboard. What can you tell us about reactions regarding the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, given that the US is now really putting that at the centre of the discussions?
Yeah, the US this evening published what would be the hardest hitting sanctions against the Russian economy. It's a draft bill that's prepared to take the blueprint for what the US could do if Russia did invade Ukraine. And as you say, Nord Stream 2 is at the very center of that. They would effectively block its use. But it's not just about Nord Stream 2. They would also hit several Russian banks with sanctions. They would ban the holding and selling of government debt. They would try to kick Russia off the SWIFT banking system. But energy, yes, the Washington now feels that Russia has used energy politics to kind of push its partners around in Europe. That's the view in Washington. And now Washington feels with this pipeline, it finally maybe has some leverage over Washington to perhaps deny some crucial revenues coming to the Russian economy. But the view here in Moscow is that Russian economy has been under sanctions since it first annexed Crimea 8 years ago. Putin has basically entirely switched his domestic economic policy in response to that to sanction-proof the Russian economy, in his view. Got rid of public debt, isolated the economy. Russia is far less exposed to the global economy than it was 8 years ago. So the feeling in Moscow may well be that it could sustain and withstand anything the US has to throw at it.